Hey, are we rolling? Because that thing says 18 seconds there. I'm seeing Oz. Welcome back to the
50 on mine. So
you got how much?
46.
It's Freaky Friday, everybody. Welcome to the Convo Couch. Pasta Jardula here.
And I'm Fiorella.
And Oz on the ones and twos. What's the matter? My energy is just, kind of like already putting you in that mood where you're going to give me snarls on a Friday.
No.
Do I deserve snarls on a Friday?
No, you're just wrong about some things. That's all.
Oh, no, I am. We don't know if we're wrong or what we're right. I mean, it's just an opinion. We're all in opinions right now. Listen, with the Colombian election, they have the ability to take pictures at every single fucking mess out there. So we'll know for sure the results. At least they have that. And I think that's great. And I tell people, regardless if there's fraud or not, I would still take that system, fam, in Colombia 1,000 times over the United States system and twice on Sunday.
Yeah. Same.
So get to the messes, take the pictures, boom, that's it, and
yeah. But you always talk about the software here in the States. Why does the software not matter in Colombia?
Oh, the software matters here in Colombia, but they're allowed to inspect it.
No, only the two parties are allowed to inspect it. There is no audit, and we don't know how far they're allowed to inspect it because there's one magistrate that's a good guy and everybody else is a piece of shit. So
what I'm saying is that I would have thought there would be fraud, fam.
I don't think that a country with the history of fraud since 1970 is going to have a randomly clean election. I just don't buy it based on what a lot of people are saying now. I hope they do, but I just don't, especially on the second round.
Yeah,
it always happens.
Well, do they not have the ability to take the picture at every single mess out there?
That's pasta. There's so many other things that could happen from there.
I understand that, but that will at least give them a fail safe. But to have anything that happens in the dark with the software,
they're not allowed to do an audit.
I know, but I'm saying for the second round, they can have a volunteer from Petro's party at every single mesa and record that data.
If they do that,
they should. That's what I'm saying. They should. That's if you can do that, why not do that? Then if they try to cheat you, then you got the receipts. You're like, nope, I got you right here. I mean, that's what they should do, but who knows what they're going to do and whatnot and stuff. So way further along the line, we both agreed than the United States, I think. And that is even the point. I just really hope at one point that the people of Colombia can take back their own country and have their own democracy and whatnot. And I think it was really great that we went. There's a lot of political stuff we can always talk about. I think you did that masterfully on your interviews, especially the one in Telesur with the rappy mopeds going behind you in the streets. You still kept your concentration.
I need to find that interview.
Awesome. You got to find that interview because it was like the smirking as you're hearing the thing come in the background, but you're still holding your character or your point of view and delivering them perfect. See, trained acting comes into play.
Bam! I'm gonna slap you.
Why? There's no reason to.
There's so many reasons. I could go on a list. Okay. Jesus. All right, let's get started. We have a guest in like 30 minutes.
We have an awesome guest, and I want everybody to hit the like button. Everybody hit the share button. This is the real deal today, guys. This is no white belt shit today. This is brown, black belt time. Matt Ehret from The Great Game is coming on the show, and we're going to talk some serious stuff because I know Fam is a big fan in a short amount of time. This guy and him and Tom Luongo on that panel with Whitney was just dynamite, and this guy knows his stuff. So, ladies and gentlemen, share the link. Get it out there. Get here before Matt gets here. Let's have a great time. It is Friday, fam.
Yeah, and actually, I'm going to share it on the Telegram, too, because, I need to do that.
I'm cat-finated.
Pasta.
Yes, fam?
I don't know how.
I don't know how you're going to survive without me either. You know what I'm saying? Who's going to make you laugh like me? Oh, okay. I will go over while Fam is sharing it on the whatchamacallit? Telegram. We have one from Cam Schwari, Kate, saying, hey to Lucky Burrito and thanks for the great gifts. Also, Oz and Joey, thanks for getting the coffee to me. Love Fee and pasta artwork on Joey's coffee. Everybody loves my picture, fam. Everybody loves my picture with the llama in the background. I was really upset that we didn't get a picture of you on the llama. I would have.
Listen.
You said I couldn't ride the llama. I was too big. You could ride the llama.
Okay. Yeah, I don't want to ride a llama. I feel like that's conquering the llama. I feel like the llama should be free. I feel like unless it's absolutely necessary to ride the llama, I'm not going to ride it because it's a comrade. It's a friend. I don't want to exploit the llama.
Those are my people don't exploit llamas. Those are some of the happiest llamas. They have a great life. They get all I got to do is little stupid rides on kids, and they get to eat whatever they want.
Yeah, on kids. God. Anyway, so guys, the EU decided again because they've been flip-flopping, right? The EU decided to ban Russian oil, and it's going to ruin it's going to ruin their economy. It's definitely not ruining the Russian economy because Russia has other markets. We know this. And so the EU approved partial Russian bans and sanctions on Sberbank. And they discussed this in a package in Luxembourg. And for the longest time, I think it was for 3 weeks or so, the Hungarian leader Orban had been blocking the sanctions, and he had been not wanting to ban because he had some sort of sense in him and to understand that the European Union, the people of the European Union, perhaps not the leaders, are going to suffer gravely for this bullshit mistake that they're doing. So basically, this measure would forbid the purchase of crude oil from Russia delivered to member states by sea in 6 months and refined petroleum products in 8 months. So it's going to be gradual. It's going to be within 6 months and then 8 months for petroleum, for the refined petroleum. And pipeline crude oil would temporarily be spared as a concession to Hungary and other landlocked countries, which rely on Russian supplies through the Druzhba pipeline. And of course, it will also see Russia's biggest bank, the Sberbank, cut off the international payment system of SWIFT. And this, of course, is also going to target the Credit Bank of Moscow and the Russian Agricultural Bank. And they will be adopted once they're published in the EU journal. Now, the way they twist this in the New York Times and the way they're putting this out there is they have to admit that this is going to be a problem for the global energy market, for the EU's economy, right? But they still have to put in there that this could hurt Russia. This in no way is going to really hurt Russia. Russia has other markets, and they do talk about them while minimizing this whole thing, right? And obviously, it's going to drive oil prices extremely high. And the EU officials haven't released everything, but their whole thing is that this is supposed to squeeze Russia's economy and basically make Russia suffer. That's their whole intent, and they really say it, right? And we're going to go to slide 10. Germany and Poland have also pledged to stop importing oil from Russia, which means that I guess Europe would reduce its imports by 3.3 million barrels by the end of the year. And so this is really ridiculous because I don't think these people realize how bad winter is going to be and how expensive things are going to get. And I think the leaders might realize it, but they don't care. But the people of the EU should probably, they might be out protesting very soon because they think that this is going to cause Russia's economy to fail. And what they don't realize is that Russia has other markets. And I think they know it, but they dismiss it, just how bad it is, right? And Russia has markets in India and China. And of course, they're in competition with also Saudi Arabia. There's Iran as well, who gets oil from both, but particularly from Saudi Arabia because it's closest. And so, according to the New York Times, right, they say that the EU's embargo could deliver a fresh jolt to the world economy, propelling a realignment of global energy trading that leaves Russia economically weaker, gives China and India bargaining power, and enriches producers like Saudi Arabia. So that's their dream scenario, that's going to happen. But that's not going to happen, guys. It's just not.
Is there any real journalist in America that gets access to some of these jerk-offs to say, okay, your idea of sanctions, Mr. President, or the president's officers, they want to talk to Sugar Bear, the new press secretary, and say, hey, listen, the game is to make Russia suffer, right? That's what these sanctions are for. This is what cutting them off from the banking system is, or whatever you want to do. What then? What's the plan then? And if that was your plan all along, the fact that the ruble is going sky high while Americans are just about to go crazy, suffering at the pump, and our dollar is going to start to fall off a cliff, isn't that a little sign that that plan for whatever you're trying to do is not working? What's plan B? That's your plan A. What's plan B? They don't. It's a marketing scheme. That's what it is. It's a pyramid scheme is what they're doing to the United States people.
I don't think they care. I mean, both the U.S., because the EU is just doing what the U.S. wants them to do. They're following Big Daddy, the USA, and they're doing the bidding of what the United States wants them to do. Both the American people and the European people are screwed if this continues. And they even admit it as much, because what happens is the people of Europe and the United States could suffer because of high oil prices. No, they will. They are already suffering. And it's going to be difficult to get things like oil and other things that, Russia exports when this happens. And of course, that we're seeing the effects of that already. And they even admit there could be shortages of certain fuels like diesel, which is crucial for trucks and agricultural equipment. If you don't have enough oil for your trucks and your agricultural, your agricultural sector, you're screwed, because that's what runs everything. If you don't have the trucks transporting the food, and if you don't have the agricultural sector being able to produce the food, being able to function, guess what happens to your food supply chain? Hello, we're already experiencing that, but they don't care. They don't care, because this is part of the plan. Part of the plan is to screw us so they can blame Russia, and also so they can enact more of a surveillance state, more of an authoritarian state. We're seeing all the the shootings happen so frequently. And I don't think we've had a chance to really talk about the shootings, and maybe we will at some point. But I think, the push to ban guns and the push to completely distract from really how bad the economy is because they project that there's going to be an uprising in people. And
there's going to be. And that's why I can't wait for our guest today, ladies and gentlemen. If you haven't shared this show, share it now. It's going to be so great, because that's going to be one of my questions for Matt Ehret when he gets on this show is, what is the plan B? They're obviously trying everything in their power right now to disarm the people. And remember, a lot of people, we talk about this all the time. When me and Fee started the show, we were hardcore anti-Second Amendment. I was like assault ban at the very least. And now it's like, hell no, I don't want only our police officers running around with guns in this country right now, because something's going to happen. And everything that's is happening from up top is like this controlled demolition of the United States empire. You know what I'm saying? It's like they want this shit to happen. And it is obvious. And what the EU is doing to themselves, Germany is just, they're slicing their own throat here.
Really?
They don't have to, listen, Russia holds all the resources. They have all the advantages. They have what they need. Germany's dependent on Russia, not the other way around. So, it's crazy right now. There's a lot of shit to get into. Go ahead, fam. I'm sorry for cutting off.
No. It's true. And it's funny because people want to get out of the United States. It was funny. I retweeted Jennifer Jaja, this comedian. She was like, it's not hot girl summer. It's hot girl, get me the hell out of here. I want to go somewhere else. Like, what the hell? Everybody's trying to leave. They just want, she said expat summer. Cause everybody sees that this, I think everybody that at least watches the show sees the decay of this. Right. And I wouldn't say I would say it was hardcore, more restrictions on guns. I wanted a lot more restrictions on guns, right? When we first started this show. And even in 2015, I can look back and be like, yeah, no, with all the shootings and stuff, we need more control. But as we got into this era where the surveillance state has expanded, we changed our mind, because that's what you do. You change your mind for new information. And now I'm hardcore pro Second Amendment, baby. Please do not. No, as long as the police and the military have their guns, you bet your ass I will not allow. I will not for the American people to give up their guns. So that makes me a right winger. I don't. So be it. You know, there's a lot of people on the left who feel that way. By the way, who are pro Second Amendment. Fam. And so you want if we lived in a society, I hate guns. I hate violence. If it were up to me, they wouldn't exist. But you're telling me that the police and the military and the CIA and these psychopaths all have access to guns, and you're asking the American people to disarm? No, no, thanks. Yeah. And so what we're seeing here is the fall of the empire, and we're seeing it, of course, through the geopolitics that's going on over there, and the really bad decisions for us that these people are making, because the defense industry is still making money, and the people in power are still going to be fine, but they don't care about you. So that's ultimately what's happening. Again, their whole aim is to weaken Vladimir Putin. It's not going to happen, right? China and India are still going to be trading with Russia. They're still, and Russia is going to have these new markets, and it's not going to do anything. They think it will. The New York Times is saying like this will happen. It could happen, but it's not. So that's that.
Oh, is that the section, fam?
Yes, fam.
Let me get this out there really quick. Ooh, wrong one. We have a Super Ray contribution, and it is from Rich Salembo, also known as Dick Salembo. How you doing, Rich? Hope you're having a great day. Thank you for the Super Ray contribution. Always appreciate it on the couch. And yeah, why don't we just jump right into the next section, because we got about 13 minutes before our guest gets here. Is that good, fam?
Yeah.
Jump right into it.
All right. So, guys, we're doing so horrible that other countries that we even sanction, like Belarus, are offering to help us out with baby formula, because Joe Biden didn't even know. He was like, I didn't realize how bad this was until recently. Yeah. I think the U.S. is a failed state, and we're seeing more truths of that. And it's unfortunate, but that's the reality. So I said, we are ready to help the Americans with supply of baby food if they want. We can start tomorrow. This is what President Lukashenko said. Yeah. And we have sanctioned, we have tried a coup, we have tried regime change in Belarus, and yet still he offers that, right? And I said, in spite of U.S. coup attempts, Belarusian president is willing to help out the U.S. Australia is also to send baby formula. The richest country in the world is a failed state and can't even provide baby formula for its citizens. I mean, this is what's happening. This is ridiculous, right? Why? Again, I say this all the time. If it were another country, if we were France, we would be out in the streets right now, like going after these politicians. Really? I mean, if it were, I mean, hello, what instead we have protests, Roe v. Wade. We have no more guns protests where they use the youth. I mean, it's crazy. So let's protest to give our gun rights away, and let's protest an invented distraction for nothing, instead of protesting against the weak leaders, the weak leadership, the disastrous economy that is happening, and the war that we're engaged in, because we are engaged in a war against Russia. Whether they want to say it or not, it's a fucking us against Russia. Ukraine is just the excuse.
Well, Ukraine is Custard's last stand. And you know what, this stuff kind of reminds me of, when you're getting back to this whole Belarus situation, it reminds me of Chavez helping out the poor in New York. Yep. And then he did it again after Hurricane Katrina, and the Obama administration cut him off. They wouldn't let him do it and stuff like that. I mean, despite everything that was going on, he had the excess energy, and he said, even though we're sanctioned by this crazy empire over here, but yeah, we're going to be compassionate enough to help their poor people because we can do so. You know what I'm saying? And this should open people's fucking eyes. Belarus is doing the same thing. Here's Lukashenko once again, and he's considered, and he's on the enemy list. Belarusians, they call him right now. They're just as disliked by the State Department as Putin in Russia is, and yet he's putting his hand out, going, "Here, help your children." What does that say about the United States? And it says they offer to help them, fam. Do you think they're going to accept their help?
I think the United States is not going to accept.
They're going to deny it. They're going to deny it. Because the American elite apparatus doesn't give a fuck about you.
They do not. They never did. Really, I mean, I mean, for the longest time, it's been like this. And you know what? I put up the RT article because Lukashenko also said that it could be a commercial product or humanitarian aid. The richest country in the world, the greatest country in the world where you could come in and live the American dream, is sunk so low that they can't even provide baby fucking formula. And you have the fucking progressives, the squad of which Nomiki wants to be a part of, or the other DSA chud wants to be a part of.
Thank you, Mr. Biden.
All voting for more money for Ukraine. And then you have Marjorie Taylor Greene and you have the freaking Republicans saying, wait a minute, we shouldn't do that. Are you kidding me? This is the world we live in right now. It is absolute insanity every single day, which I guess keeps us busy. We can't even sleep anymore because something happens every day.
Say it for Steve. Where do we live?
You want to say it? I don't want to say it.
We live in a cartoon.
And it's a terrible cartoon because it stopped being funny. Okay. Whoever is writing the jokes needs to get fired. So this is exactly what he said, because I want to read exactly what he said, right? He said, we have good milk, good meat products for kids, canned food, formula, everything. If they'd like it, we could launch supplies tomorrow. The Belarus leader, who was sanctioned by the U.S. for alleged violations of human rights, added that he was willing to offer the food either as a commercial product or humanitarian aid. He believed that Americans could afford to pay for Belarusian products. The president made the remarks when talking to the press. He called on reporters to relay this offer to every American. Now, again, hello. And so, okay, so according to the original reports, this shortage was caused by the February shutdown of a Michigan plant operated by Abbott Laboratories over contamination concerns. That's a whole other rabbit hole of weirdness that we could go down, because the burning of these food processing plants is also another thing we've talked about. Very strange. The facility, which accounts for roughly 40% of the formula in the U.S. market, recalled some of its products and shut down a manufacturing plant after 4 babies who had been fed formula made at the facility contracted a rare bacterial infection. 2 of them later died. Where are these bacterial infections coming from? Why is all of this happening right now? U.S. President Joe Biden acknowledged this week that he underestimated the importance of the plant for the supply. He said this administration switched into full gear after becoming aware of the situation in early April and was moving to resolve the crisis. He was late to doing so. And so Australia is also going to give us some, supposedly they'll probably take Australia because Australia is one of the Five Eyes partners. But again, just a reminder to everybody, and I know our team makes sure to remind this, Belarus as a nation and President Lukashenko personally have been in the crosshairs of multiple rounds of Western sanctions. The last batch came as a retaliation for the countries having allowed Russian troops to use its territory to stage the offensive against Ukraine. Notice how they say offensive. Yeah. But yeah, they were persona non grata for allowing the Russians in. So, and they're still helping out. They're still like, hey, we'll help you out. Putin even said recently that it was really sad that this happened, that Americans don't have baby formula. But
well, I want to look a little bit more too into this. Every single time I think about this, you talk about that problem, reaction, solution. I always say problem, crisis, solution. Mm-hmm. They create the crisis and stuff. And at what point did they create this crisis? Was it to get the Bill Gates and George Soros fake impossible titty milk out there, whatever you want to call it and stuff? Or is there another reason behind this? Because, we've talked about this before, fam, and our whole network's been talking about these food supply places, these manufacturing places where, they collect all these food and everything is getting burnt down to a crisp. They're culling all these chickens and the egg prices are going up and stuff. It almost seems like the kind of behind the scenes plan of, okay, we're going to crash the economy of the United States. Now we're going to also make sure that we kind of starve people out and have them fighting each other and killing each other. I don't know if that's what it is and stuff, but I'm just, my wheels are turning and saying, okay, why did this problem really happen? Because it doesn't seem like a problem like this would really occur. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, you got Demented Joe in the White House, for crying out loud, and the freaking ignorance of the United States corporations and shit, and how stupid they are now. Who's at the wheel? They really are dumb. But I mean, are they that dumb, or is this a crisis created for a reason? And that's what I keep asking myself. Why did they do this? Wait, what's going on? Hold on a second.
I just find it very hard to believe that a country with so much wealth can't get baby formula. That's the issue. Like, it's just not logical. It's not about me, thinking up some sort of conspiracy. It's just the fact. It's just not logical that would happen when they literally are sending billions of dollars elsewhere. It just doesn't make any sense.
Zero.
That's something, and then and also the fact that we're there in every single mainstream news source and every single pundit and every single politician. They blame Putin. They have said as much. They said as much when they instructed the TikTok influencers. When they were like, oh yeah, this, Vladimir Putin is causing this, but you're the generation that's going to be able to defeat, an authoritarian. But like, they were instructing the kids to blame Vladimir Putin. I mean, this is all about making Russia the evil boogeyman and getting people to agree to a controlled nuclear war, which, by the way, is an impossibility. And the only thing that's going to result that's positive, as I was telling Oz earlier, is perhaps a death of humanity because there's disease on the rest of the world. I mean, we are. I mean, if this is what we do, maybe Earth will be able to continue on. But if you have idiots asking for nuclear war right now, which you do, you have a lot of people. I don't know what to tell you. I don't know how much more this can happen. People are joking, saying, hey, maybe if I don't make it till Halloween, if I don't make it till Christmas, it's like, this is a very real threat right now. And it's being pushed by our own government. Yeah. And that's the saddest part. It's like, well, are you going to be a true American and stand up and say, hey, when the government isn't doing what it's supposed to be doing for you, it's in the Declaration of Independence that you must oppose it. That's patriotic if you want to go there. It's not patriotic to just conditionally support your government when it's wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. But I have so many thoughts too, as well. And there's so many questions. I'm going to hold them for Matt Ehret when he gets here, because this is what is the next move? What is the next move for these globalist crazy psychos that are running shit over here? I mean, they're literally, we can't snap our fingers and just lower oil and gas prices, but you can snap your fingers and get 40 billion and just send it over to Ukraine like it's no tomorrow. 54 billion since this whole thing started. God knows how much money since 2014. You could snap your fingers and cause war and correct those problems right away. I mean, what if for that 40 billion can go to a lot of good things here at home, fam, right? You know what I'm saying? It can go to subsidize oil for the American people.
Yeah.
There you go. How about you don't send the 40 billion over there? I mean, it's just and these lawmakers, these fucking goons, they get away with it. The Pelosi's and fucking Chuck and Nancy are just crazy. And then you got Lindsey Graham. Holy cow with these people. Holy cow. And like you said, we got to count on Marjorie Taylor Greene and Matt Gaetz to come say some shit. Rand Paul, who couldn't even mention Julian Assange. He's got to say some shit.
Yeah. Well, that's the current state we're in. And our guest is here. Guys, let's introduce you to Matt Ehret. Matt's a journalist, author, and has his own Substack that you should probably check out. Matt, thank you for coming.
Hey, thank you for having me on.
There he is.
There he is. We'll have him on the screen shortly.
The great game is in the house, man. How you doing, Matt Ehret?
Hey, very well. Very, very well. Thank you.
Fam, do you want to start off? Do you want me to jump into it? Because I got a million questions here today. And ladies and gentlemen, if you haven't shared the stream, now is the time. Matt is in the house. Let's get it out there. Hit the like button. Hit the share button. This is not going to be a white belt conversation. This is going to be more like brown and black belt. If you haven't been following Matt, you don't know what you're missing. He's got some great stuff. Is it the Great Game on Rumble is where you have some videos too as well?
Oh, yeah. And thank you for that generous introduction. The weekly show I do on Rogue News is The Great Game with V and CJ. And you can get that on Rumble, on roguenews.com, my own website, Canadian Patriot, a few other places.
Perfect.
Okay, great. So I'm going to start, Pasta, because you go right into the jugular. So I just want to start off with the Russia Ukraine scenario, that's what's happened thus far, right? We were just discussing the EU banning Russian oil and how that's essentially destroying the economy. They're basically going to copy what the United States is doing. And right now, things are not great in the US, as you probably know, 41-year high inflation, food shortages. The greatest country in the world cannot get baby formula to mothers. Congress, every single Democrat gave billions of dollars to Ukraine, and we continue to do so. So that is what's happening. So what is the end goal is my question to this conflict from the EU, NATO, US perspective?
Yeah, the end goal, to keep it in a simple, principled, top-down format, the end goal is ultimate a restoration of feudalism. I mean, to unpack that a little bit more, there has been a romanticization in the minds of a certain oligarchical caste, which has been maintaining itself for many generations around this idea of a pristine world of stasis and well-behaved talking cows that was more pronounced in the days before the Renaissance, long before the American Revolution and before the Golden Renaissance, when there was something changed. Let's just keep it at that. Something changed during the 15th century Renaissance. And all of a sudden, new ways of thinking about natural law, the nature of man, the relationship between mankind, humankind, and God, completely revolutionized in action. And we had a complete spike of population growth, but not just in quantity, but also in quality of life. New breakthroughs in medicine, geometry, astronomy, architecture. I mean, look at the music and the beautiful art that exploded onto the scene. Before that period, it was known as a medieval period, where the majority of the people were relatively, had a low life expectancy. There was not that much that differentiated human beings or the masses from talking cows that lived on a plantation under a feudal lord who lived in their castles, having orgies and living in decadence. That was, again, not even that great for the oligarchies living in the castle. In hindsight, they didn't even have soap or running water. Their hygiene wasn't that great and their life expectancy wasn't that great either, but they romanticize it, which is why today we're now in the wake of several generations since the death of JFK, where there has been a reinstatement of an agenda to bring back feudalism, but with certain new technological innovations under a technotronic sort of twist. And the catalyzer for that is the collapse of the Western transatlantic banking system, which is being put into a controlled demolition. Artificial scarcity is being accelerated as a consequence, as part of the plan. And the thing about this is that those who are trying to operate or manage this controlled demolition are a little more than angry right now, are very angry. They're very enraged because the New World Order script is not falling into line the way it was supposed to a decade ago, 20 years ago. Things were supposed to look a little bit different right now. There was not supposed to be any opposing system to their depopulation agenda, their one world government. And increasingly what we've seen is that a variety of nations and ancient civilizational states have basically chosen not to commit suicide or to be sacrificed on this altar of Gaia, which is really what it is under a twist. There's new language to it, but it's the ancient Gaia cults effectively repackaged for a modern age, which we're being expected to kill ourselves under. Hence the lacking of food, the lacking of available energy, which is otherwise very, very remote. Like we don't have to have these crises at all. And there's another game in town. And so there's a vying over who's going to shape the conditions of the new system that's going to come online. Is it going to be based on this old feudal New World Order agenda, or is it going to be based upon something a little bit more dignified?
Wow. Wow. Okay. So what we're alluding to here is the new other game in town is where a lot of us kind of debate. We don't know what's going on in front of us is all just theater and everybody's playing together. But there's also this theory that no, Mr. Vladimir Putin has kind of broken off from the West and say, no, I'm not going to play your game anymore. There's a lot of evidence that shows that in Davos, they're really not talking about him anymore. They're not crazy about him. And it does seem by all the actions from the West that he is defying their great plan that you talked about, and I believe you alluded to in the crosstalk episode about putting us in a box and making that box smaller and smaller and smaller. Yeah. But right now, the Bilderberg Group is suspected to be meeting in D.C. That's what everybody's kind of blowing the alarm on this morning. And I had the luxury, I should say, or the honor of speaking to Vanessa Billy today, and then Jason Burmis, and now yourself. It's just been an amazing day. But how sure are you that Russia, and also let's talk a little bit about China and India, because there are people who immediately point to Xi Jinping with that classic picture with him and Klaus Schwab, saying that no, he's still part of the whole thing. But how sure are you that these three nations, when it comes to Russia, China, and India, are not part of this global agenda that these psychos that pretty much from the Bilderberg Group have put into play?
Okay. Yeah, from the standpoint of principle of action, like I try to approach things from the standpoint of what is the governing operating principles of the oligarchical system as a continuous system going back to ancient times, right? So I'm looking at like, what is the invariance? There's things that change, things that don't change. There's certain characteristics of empire of the type we're discussing here, which is always the case. The seeking for absolute control is one, but a seeking for population control, depopulation specifically, dumbing down of the talking cows, because the talking cows don't have access to their proper creative mental powers. You encounter thus boundary conditions, limits to resources, limits to development that justify then the idea that we're overpopulated. And this is not a new thing, right? Like going back to ancient texts from ancient Rome, there was, and even before that, there's discussion about culling the human cattle every once in a while by the elite. This is not a new thing. It's just a consequence of dumbing people down and then having no discoveries that you need to have in order to overcome the limits to growth. There's always limits to growth, but they're caused by ignorance. So that's one thing. They want to dumb down, reduce the population. They want total hegemony from a master class. So one group at the top having absolute power as an executive branch over the entire system. And the system is defined as a static system, a whole that is simply the sum of its parts. And because the whole is not more than the sum of its parts, that's another thing about empire. They always define the whole as a material thing, right? There's always a diminishing rate of returns in time because you cannot create more energy than you use up. Like any engine where you put gas in the tank, that the pistons move as the gas is burnt up. And as the gas is burnt up, there's less energy to be distributed to maintain the actions necessary for the engine to function. So it's moving towards heat death, and it's not going to come up with new gas right from within the tank. Only human beings can do that because we're a creature of mind. So we can create new resources and make new discoveries. So they don't want us to think like that. They want us to think like we're this closed system. All that exists is all that could exist, and it's just the elites managing the human zoo. So when I look at Russia and China and also India increasingly, what I'm seeing is a defiance of those basic parameters. The trend over the past 30 years, especially since China kicked out George Soros in 1989, Russia took them a little bit longer. They only did it in 2015, and banned the open society operations within both countries. They're not allowed to operate there. They're running our society, mind you, but they're not allowed to operate there. So go figure. Since then, there's been an overarching trend towards mass industrialization, new scientific progress, and overall anti-depopulation orientation policies. I don't see that in the West. In terms of when I mean that is I see that there is an overarching policy, like China has produced, for example, 40,000 kilometers of high-speed rail moving 300 to 500 kilometers an hour. We have in the West produced almost zilch. We're still using 1950s technology. We've shut down. We were closer to having this stuff in the 1970s than we are today. We shut it all down because that was the intention, was to get us back into the Stone Age. So you have that. You have also a defiance of divide to conquer regime change policies. So both Russia and China together have worked together very closely, and it's right that you ask me about Russia and China together because they are together. They have put the reason why there was not a successful Iraq treatment or Afghanistan or Libya treatment in the case of Syria or Venezuela, for example, has everything to do with the intervention by Russia, China, especially, also in Kazakhstan, there's many countries, it's a big list. So you have an avoidance of regime change, and there's also the attempts by these countries to expose the bioterror apparatus, which has been really grown into a giant behemoth monster since the anthrax days of September 18th, 2001, when there was another inside job called Anthrax that justified this entire bioterror complex by the Pentagon. That's been something that both countries have been looking at for 20 plus years, have been speaking openly about, and trying to figure out how do they shed light on this or stop this in case of the Pentagon operations in South Korea or in Ukraine or in Georgia. There's a lot of it. 326 last time I checked, US-run Biolabs internationally. So they have all of these things. And so, yes, when George Soros has said in 2010 positive things about China, or Kissinger or Justin Trudeau has said they like the totalitarian system of China, what they're looking at, what they're specifically referring to is the central controls. They like the social credit, central controls. They like that type of command structure and surveillance. They love those things. Everything that China is actually doing, though, in terms of function, design, and intent, they hate that. The ability to build big projects, enhance the power of other sovereign nation states to have full spectrum industrial economies, like we see at Ethiopia, Kenya, every country they do business with. They hate all of that. So, I got to differentiate that. And I do see a bit of like, yes, China, Xi Jinping or Putin will go to World Economic Forum conferences. And that's part of history. People who sometimes good people go to bad meetings and bad people go to good meetings, and good people say bad things, but then do good things. And then bad people say good things and then do bad things. And that's part of like the ambiguity of history. And you can't judge some surface appearance sometimes, Yeah.
Well, that's the whole thing. Like Putin, he's a spy at heart. So he just went in there to see what they were talking about. Now he's like, all right, I got all their information. I'm pulling the chain and doing my own thing for the benefit of Mother Russia and against the West. I'm sorry, Fran, go ahead.
No, I mean, I tend to agree with you on the pushback from Russia, at least. China, there's a lot of going on with the global South. I want to kind of bring in the global South into this, Latin America. There is this idea that we're heading towards a multipolar world from this unilateral world. Where does the global South fall into this agenda in terms of, the relationship between China and, say, other countries like Nicaragua, Venezuela, and Russia as well? We know Iran has also been involved in supplying food and certain items into Venezuela. Where does all of this lie in terms of the multipolar world when in the context of this whole global agenda?
Well, I think that you have, like, the fight is, like I said, over how we're going to get a new system. That's going to happen. Like the current system there's nothing within the current system that we've known for the past 50 years that has within it the power to exist in the way that it has existed. I don't even call it a banking system. I call it a bubble. Or Siliwanov, the finance minister of Russia, said, don't call it American money or euros, call it candy wrappers. That's what it is. It's candy wrappers. And they want us to give them oil and our commodities. And yet, because we're producing real things and they want to give us candy wrappers in return, don't worry about it. It's not a big loss that we don't have this market, because they're looking at the fact that the whole Western system is going to go up in hyperinflationary smoke. The South American, Latin American, Caribbean countries, LATAM, I would include Mexico into the mix. Overall, they have a better sense of what globalization actually is behind the veneer, the surface veneer, because they got the coup d'etat, assassination, debt slavery, IMF conditionality side of things that have really subverted a lot of development potential that they have had over the past 80 years. And I think all of the viewers of this program are aware of that. So they have less delusion about what it is. And I think there's a greater hunger to find something which is actually viable. The only game in town, like right now, Russia and China, especially, Russia doesn't have as much economic power to do things, right? Because their central bank is still a private central bank run by a lot of IMF assets, whereas the nationalist component, right, the not deep state part of Russia has a lot of control over their military and intelligence, not as much control over their cultural policies, their media, a little bit on the media, but not as much as you'd think, and banking. They don't have a lot of control over the banking. That's a big fight currently. China doesn't have as much of a strong military function. It's much weaker in that sense, relatively to other countries, or to Russia specifically, and especially the US. But it has a very strong capacity through its national banking system that it never permitted to be privatized. It has a greater capacity to emit large-scale credit for projects that are like 10, 15, 20-year projects that benefit the recipient nations. So it's not really debt slavery the way the CIA is trying to convince us that they're using debt slavery or something. So they have currently in South America about 40 controlling stakes in about 40 ports that have all really just occurred in the past 5-6 years primarily. That's a strategically important thing to have that, and a lot of investment offers for building real infrastructure across a variety of countries. I know Argentina is soon going to become a member of the BRICS. The Kirchners, a lot of people hate the Kirchners. I like them, especially Nestor, and I think Christina, who still has a lot of influence in the current, ironically it's called Kirchner government, has a good understanding of the nature of the vulture funds, the bankers that have been using neocolonialism to keep everyone underdeveloped. There's a lot, again, China has offered a lot in terms of real development aid that's not just aid, but real, no strings attached investment opportunities into building major infrastructure, which has been blocked by 75 years of World Bank controls over that region. So I think that they would jump on board very quickly to a new, like if you had a new type of Eurasian monetary emergency conference, kind of like what happened in 1944 in Bretton Woods, if something like that, and I think it will happen sooner than later, were to happen in the coming weeks or months ahead, most of the South American countries at this point would rather get off the Titanic and get on something that floats. So yeah, I think that there's a lot of positivity there.
They must be sweating bullets over there if the Bilderberg Group is meeting in DC right now. I can only imagine what's going through their mind. But let's stay on this topic while we're talking about it, because you did talk about, the monetary system, the dollar be almost like candy wrappers. It's not backed by anything, right? Yeah. The ruble is now worth more than it's ever been worth, right? And can you explain a little bit about how Russia's currency is backed by commodities and what that is doing actually now to the Western monetary system, the a la candy wrappers, since this military action began?
Well, there's still a fight. It's a transition. It's a transitionary thing right now with the ruble. So there's still, because of the influence of certain people, like Elvira Nabiullina, who's the head of the Bank of Russia, she has been resisting those like Sergei Glaziev, who's a major player as a minister of integration of the Eurasian affairs. He's in charge largely of the program of what is animating Eurasia. The Eurasian Economic Union. Eurasian Economic Union, which has a deep relationship with China, and specifically, there's a project underway to create a new financial architecture, which Glaziev has been spearheading for some time. It's accelerating now since the Ukraine operation has really gone full steam ahead. But again, the paradigm of what Glaziev is talking about clashes with what Elvira Nabiullina, Yale educated. I don't trust her. Putin seems to think he can manage her or work with her. I don't know. I'm not on the inside, so I'm looking at this and piecing it together from the outside, right?
What is her position exactly in Russia? So
she's the governor of the Bank of Russia.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, and very, very liberal-minded. Very much. She's made the argument to keep the ruble floated, like tied to the floating exchange rates, which makes it more prone to speculative attacks, the whimsy of the casino economy. Whereas Glaziev and many others in Russia have been saying, no, we got to fix it to a more fixed exchange rate that inoculates it from the type of speculative attacks by a George Soros, for example, who's able to, carry out an attack by buying up and then selling short on a currency when you want to cripple a country. And it creates a climate of long-term thinking when you have fixed exchange rates. But then what do you fix it to, right? And so Glaziev has made the point, as have many others, that it should be pegged towards an array of about 20 commodities, gold being one of them, but also wheat production, various industrial indices, like things that are physical. You can have physical metrics to judge whether the money in circulation is legit or not. So it's a fight right now. It's not fully there yet, but it's moving ahead in a pretty healthy way. And most importantly, conceptually speaking, their governing class, it has put a high priority on hard industrial growth, especially with a look towards Siberia, the Arctic, and Eurasia, with large-scale deals with Iran. Russia and Iran have a major 25-year economic security partnership with energy as a focus, same type of thing that Iran has signed with China. So these are things that are animating the entire thinking and paradigm of the ruble, which is also tied, last thing I'll say, to breaking free of US dollar hegemony. As you know, Seliwan have said, candy wrappers, they're balancing, they're allowing payments and trade to be finalized by local currencies, whether yuan, ruples, rupees in India. So a lot of increasing amounts of local partner countries are settling their trade in their local currencies and getting off of their addiction to this time bomb called the US dollar, which is great. That's a healthy thing to do.
My question is more related to this whole push by the United States and the EU, this focus on climate catastrophe. Yeah. We have in the United States, of course, Build Back Better, the Green New Deal. We have all these projects pushed by the same people that are voting for more war, that are pro, a strategic nuclear attack of sorts. And a lot of what we've learned about this goes into what the Great Reset is. And they seem like Trojan horse projects to obviously bring in this new world order where there's a constant control. And of course, for example, the poor get told to recycle more or to not drive as far. We've seen the legislation be put in the bills to control how much people drive in the United States, in bills that are thousands and thousands of pages long where nobody reads them. And then, of course, the rich never get told to not fly their planes or, use their yachts. But what is the I guess the order, like the purpose of this Build Back Better, Green New Deal type of legislation in terms of what the new world order wants to put out there?
Yeah, well, in short, it touches on what I mentioned at the beginning, global technocratic depopulation under a feudal order, with a modern twist. Their computer models, since the early 70s, there has been a popularization of the idea that digital computer models using binary, 1-0 logic could map out optimal population levels on the Earth. And that was originally promoted with a lot of backing by groupings associated with the Bilderberger groups, called the Club of Rome, for example, was one of the first early organizations that utilized computers to conduct population. What are the limits to our growth? How do we calculate that with relative knowledge of the rate of growth of agricultural land spaces over all available resources, and rates of pollution increasing? So they introduced a bunch of metrics, and then they ran them in a series of probability statistics that were built into their models. It was published in a book form in 1972 called The Limits to Growth. It's sort of the Bible of the modern environmentalist movement, which most environmentalists are not even aware what's actually underlying their own movement. And what they charted out is that by a certain point, 50 years in the future, we'd be way overpopulated. We'd have a resource crisis, and thus we could predictively act now in the 70s to start solving the problem before the problem hits, right? This is called the Neo-Malthusian revival, because this is basically just the repackaging with a little bit more complexity of the old ideas of Thomas Malthus, the old British Empire, British East India Company economist, who justified the idea of killing babies, killing the poor, the useless eaters to stop overpopulation. That was disproven in the 19th century by, people who were demonstrating that no, when you do things a little bit differently from the British Empire and you give people the opportunity to use their minds, you don't have those same problems of the Malthus crisis. So it went out of style. People stopped respecting Malthus for a long time. And 200 years later or so, they wanted to bring it back, and they did in that form. These people who did, and one of the earliest platforms that popularized this was the World Economic Forum. At its second meeting, brought in Aurelio Peccei, one of the Club of Rome co-founders, with Alexander King, and they gave a platform to showcase their computer models. It was promoted by the Trilateral Commission of Kissinger, Zbigniew, and David Rockefeller. It was brought in by Kissinger into the NSSM 200. Like Kissinger in 1974 rewrote the entire system of foreign aid protocols of the US government called National Security Memorandum 200, which can be read. It was declassified in 1991. And it's horrific. He literally says that instead of encouraging full spectrum development to like Egypt or Ethiopia or Mexico, the way former governments had been doing as US foreign policy, like instead of allowing them or encouraging technological growth or progress, that's actually wrong. We were misguided. We didn't know about the current science of population like we do now. And he said the new policy must be to encourage depopulation. We'll have to give them incentives to sterilize, to use birth control, to we'll threaten them with food constraints if they don't abide by the type of changes in their governing structures that we demand in order for them to get loans. And he listed 15 countries. China was also high on his mind, but he didn't put it on the list, which is where the Club of Rome was introduced into China in 1979-80. Their models were brought in as part of the package that Kissinger negotiated for China to access industry. It desperately needed it. It had done a lot of self-mutilation in the that was Britain. The Cultural Revolution, which was really a big misstep. So they had a lot of poverty, a lot of self-induced damage, and they needed industry. So Kissinger said, okay, you'll be the slave society. You'll do the sweatshops. We'll be a consumer society. We won't have industries anymore in the West. We'll be first world. You'll be second, and you'll stay you'll have enough money just to keep your nose above water, but not to buy the goods that you produce. That'll be for our dollar stores. And so the Club of Rome, the one-child policy, was brought in not as a Chinese policy, but as part of this package. China has been still trying to heal from that. 40 years later, they've undone it, but it's still like a lot of damage that they're trying to remediate now. And so today we're now 50 years into the wake of this thing, and what they've done with the Green New Deal, the Build Back Better, all of this stuff is they've made us stupid when it comes to an understanding of the science of energy and population. There's a long-standing awareness that there's a direct correlation between the quality of energy that a society has as a form of like fire to burn that allows us to do things, right? It's like a metabolism for society. Energy is like our metabolism, right? Fire is, we have an internal heat, right? We go to the gym, we burn calories, you eat the energy bar, gives you calories to burn, and you do work, right? And you need to replenish. So whether it's burning wood, burning coal, burning oil, burning, getting into the atom, a new form of geometry of energy mass relationships that can be harnessed for good or for bad. In each phase, it requires certain discoveries and technologies, right? Because with ignorance, you can't move from one set to the next. But you then have a greater potential to support more people at a higher quality of life. The writings of, I learned all this stuff by studying the writings of the recently deceased American economist Lyndon LaRouche, who goes through this at length. Fascinating stuff. But the empire has been looking at this as well. And they want to get us addicted to qualities of energy that are so shit poor, low quality, windmills, solar panels, that you cannot sustain industrial civilization. You cannot make a windmill with windmill power, right? That it's the opposite of sustainable, because you cannot burn. You cannot, with the quality of electron motion that you get from windmills or from solar photovoltaic cells, you cannot get the high intensity heat required to melt industrial steel, process concrete, do the things you need for 7 or 8 or 9 billion lives to be sustained. It forces you into a tiny little box. And that's what they wanted to do by first blowing up the current system, then saying, okay, hydrocarbons and nuclear are off the table because those are all bad. And Alexander King, the founder of the Club of Rome, even admitted in 1991 in the foreword of his book on the first global revolution that that in looking for something to unite humanity, they entertained, he says, pollution, the idea of global warming caused by human activity fit the bill just fine. But he said even that wasn't adequate because the real problem is humankind itself. How can we get mankind to recognize that we are the enemy that we need to deal with? We are the cancer. So these were all just cover stories that to get human beings to go along with or acquiesce to our own seeing ourselves as a cancer and thus dealing with ourselves like you would a cancer, cutting ourselves out. Windmills and solar panels are not going to do it. That would cause us to depopulate. Russia and China again, and India will have none of it. That's the reason why the first green world government attempt failed in 2009. Another reason why I tend to trust Russia and China and India currently is because India and China together locked themselves in a room at the COP14 conference when they were supposed to come out with binding climate reduction treaties for decarbonization. They basically locked themselves in the room, the Indian and Chinese delegations, and said, we're not coming out. We're not, and they sabotaged the whole world government conference. It didn't happen the way it was supposed to back 12 years ago. So they're doing it by investing in more coal, more hydrocarbon, more nuclear than ever before in history, and saying, global warming is bad. So we need more hydrocarbons. That's why plants eat it.
But isn't there like a middle ground for this argument? You know, I mean, I wanted to go somewhere else, but while we're here, isn't there like a middle ground for this argument? Like, we don't need plastic, right? We don't need to deforest the planet to wipe our ass. We can grow hemp at a crazy rate. We can use hemp for energy and power and stuff. So isn't there a middle ground to this argument? Because, I still think too much of one thing is really bad. And I'm not saying we switch all over to currents, windmills, solar and whatnot, but there's other forms of energy, and especially when it comes to the whole plastic situation. I mean, I'm sorry, but this is where George Carlin was wrong. You know, I mean, like, plastic is bad. We can do other things than, polluting our oceans with this crap. And it is an oil product too as well. So, I mean, isn't there a middle ground for this conversation where we can have some form of like cleanliness in our society?
I'm not into extremist opinions, and so I like nuance. I like shades of gray oftentimes, which is usually where you you find the truth. So certainly, I tend to agree with you that we should be looking at alternative forms of, like, hemp is certainly something that I find very interesting, and we should be definitely exploring and utilizing it to a much fuller potential. Totally. But at the same time, a lot of the effects of pollution that we currently suffer from are completely unnecessary. And if anything, Jesus, like the amount of, there's no reason to have the plastic in the oceans, like Plastic Island and things like that floating in the ocean. We don't need those are so unnecessary. I don't necessarily think we need to get off of plastic per se all at once. That might take time to transition over generations, in my view. But I do think, though, that you could have, when you look at what has been sabotaged over the past 50 years, especially since JFK and his brother died, there's been a constant sabotage effort over discoveries that we were close to making decades ago, and we were probably closer then than we are today, to nuclear fusion power, all forms of, things like there were actual government-backed programs for things like the nuclear fusion torch. Both cold, hot fusion, like there's so many different pathways to tap into the binding of light atoms that both create then heavier atoms, helium and other heavier atoms that also have an energy mass release. We had programs for a fusion, the fusion torch. If we had not sabotaged that, canceled it back in the early 70s, what that does is it gives you the power to take any minefield. Not mines like bombs, but I said minefield, I meant the garbage field, right? Garbage dump. And you can basically disassemble all elements of the garbage into their constituent atoms. You basically render it a plasma, because all matter can exist as a solid, a liquid, or a gas, or a plasma, 4 states. By heating up the molecules into a plasma state, utilizing certain magnetic signatures, you could then filter out whatever atom or isotope you seek to desire. Whether you want pure silicon, you can get that. There's more in the average cubic mile of average ocean water. You have more aluminum, more iron by magnitudes than the world produces globally per year. It's astounding. It's just so diffuse that it's useless for us to access it because it's so diffuse. Whereas with the plasma torch, you can actually start the whole idea of mining and what matter is all changes. And that's the sort of thing that people were thinking about in policymaking circles in science 40, 50 years ago in a more serious way than they are today. That's been crippled in our school system. It's like foreboding. And a lot of scientists have even died, mysterious deaths, who are moving us in that direction. So I think that whole thing needs to be discussed. We have to put light onto what's been subverted, because we should be in so much more of an advanced situation now than we actually are.
And Matt, what are they hiding at Area 51? That's what I want to know. They got some shit over there. Pam, do you have a question? Because I'm going to go with Henry Kissinger.
Well, for me, I guess the question is, you know, well, you want to go into Henry Kissinger, so I don't know. I don't know if you want to go ahead and do that. I was going to go ask.
Well, I just want to know what he thinks about Henry Kissinger's statement right now, recently at Davos, and like how far up on the totem pole, because it was obvious Soros came out with the same type of bullshit speech. We got to stop the authoritarian boogeyman, yada, 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 yada. And then we have to do all this crap to do so. But Kissinger kind of threw that curveball, right? When he made that statement about as far as what's going on, that Zelensky should just shut the hell up and negotiate right now. And it was really caught me off guard. I'm like, Henry Kissinger said that? So, and, you know, and Henry Kissinger goes all the way back to, you know, the development of the Bilderberg group back in the days. So it's, I just wanted to get your opinion on where that came from, because it was kind of shocking out of left field to hear Henry Kissinger say those words.
Yeah, you know, I'm not really, you know, I have to speculate. I can't get into Kissinger's nasty.
You're the guy to speculate. I don't want to get into his mind. That's why I called you. Is like, you got to speculate. I want your speculation. Sorry.
Right, so my speculation is either one, he's always played a bit of a gang operation, right? So people have often thought that Kissinger is sort of the nemesis to Zbigniew Brzezinski, for example. Kissinger was more active under Nixon. Zbigniew was more active under Carter. Fact is, they had different flavors of imperialism, and they were both trilateral commission leaders. It was a fake opposition. It was two different pathways to get to the same result, right? Kissinger was slightly more of a liberal, realpolitik imperialist. Kissinger had a different approach. Now, Kissinger, I know one thing about him, and having read his early works on the Congress of Vienna when he was an early Bilderberger Group inductee in 1959, just out of school. He was himself groomed by a Rhodes Scholar named William Yandell Elliott, who ran a sort of an Oxford Department of Young Sociopathic Boys that he cultivated in Harvard. Kissinger just being one of them. Pierre Elliott Trudeau and Zbigniew actually were two others who were Huntington's boys. It's creepy and weird. So anyway, Kissinger, in his first works, says, and he makes it explicit, it's sort of like his lifelong manifesto of the Congress of Vienna being the most important period of world history that governs his entire life. Congress of Vienna, 1815, being the time where you had the restoration of the monarchies after the age of chaos of Napoleon. And that was the period of the restoration, really, of oligarchical systems. The old hereditary families were able to reinstate control. You had a sphere of influence, an apparent stability, but it actually was just apparent. There wasn't a real stability. And it's really a religion of stasis, a religion of stability that he defines as the highest good. Anything which disrupts stability is evil. The greater degree to which it disrupts the stability that he supposes is the most natural state for human society to exist. Again, it's like fixed no change is the religion, right? The greater degree that it destabilizes the system, the greater degree it is evil. The irony here is that human creativity is the thing which causes the greatest destabilizations to a system. Because you introduce a new discovery, it makes all of the former ways you were doing things in the old without that discovery, without that technology, obsolete. So that completely is very upsetting for power-hungry freaks. For humans, it's very exciting and great. You know, we love new discoveries. Like, that's what makes us discover awe and wonder in the universe and makes us love human beings, right? Because we all can make these discoveries. It's not dependent on which caste you're born into. So Kissinger is like that. Now, either he's playing a gang-counter-gang operation against Soros, who's just being Soros, calling for ousting Xi Jinping, overthrowing the CPC, ousting Putin, calling for total war with Russia, and trying to sound like the good cop, bad cop. Or maybe he's 99 years old, maybe, and perhaps he really does recognize that the launching of a nuclear war on the earth would undo his lifelong work, which I don't think he really wanted nuclear war. I think a lot of what he did was to try to create a system of one world government to get rid of the danger of nuclear war, but to bring about a total enslavement of the masses by a managerial elite. Now, if today we actually do have a heated nuclear war being launched, that really is unstable. That's a very unstable situation that then arises. So maybe he's responding to the reality of the hell on earth that could easily happen? Maybe. I don't know that, but that's my thinking.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense, because I don't think he would suddenly change his entire mindset. But so my question is along the lines of the pandemic, and this is like my final question. In terms of what we're seeing, there's this debate where some say, well, it's the age of the pandemic, which is why we're seeing, all these coronaviruses, the monkeypox, and all of that. And then there's the other side that says, no, this is obviously done by design. And, we are on YouTube, but just your opinion on what you think the discoveries of the Biolabs, funded, of course, by the United States in Ukraine, have to do with, of course, a lot of the pandemics that we've been seeing in recent years. And if that is, of course, something that is also manipulated as well. In my opinion, a lot of that has been in the United States, obviously extremely manipulated. And I do think that a bioweapon is another type of attack that can be used against the people.
I'm holding my mouth a little bit because in my mind I'm trying to think, how could I answer this without getting this video erased from YouTube?
When you said we're on YouTube, he was smiling, fam. He's like,
well, we can go to Rockfin only if he wants to.
You want to wait 2 seconds?
No. I could try. It's good exercise. I mean, I'm
try. It didn't work out. Video down. Strike to the combo couch.
I mean, my YouTube channel has been in the penalty box for 2 weeks now because I think I said a bad word. So I got to practice this. All right. So yeah. I know for a fact that let's go for history first, okay, because that's usually safer. So after World War II, it wasn't just a bunch of Nazis and Nazi doctors and Mengele and Ukrainian Nazis like Bandera who were absorbed into Anglo-American intelligence to fight the big bad commies throughout the Cold War, right? That happened. It was called Operation Gladio. It also had different elements to it. And we absorbed a lot of Nazi scientists. Not all, a couple of them might have been good guys, but for the most part, like people like Mengele and all of his research.
Operation Paperclip?
Paperclip, yeah. And I kind of like Werner von Braun, frankly. People say bad things about him. I think he was a good guy. But anyway, that's my theory. Anyway, there were a lot of bad Nazis, Nazi science that was absorbed into the U.S. establishment and the U.S. military-industrial complex. And it wasn't just that; it was also Japan. And you had here. Hiro Ishii, the general who was responsible for upwards of 500,000 murders utilizing bio experiments, chemical weapons and other things on POWs and Chinese civilians throughout World War II. A lot of Russian, a lot of American POWs were dissected after being exposed to various forms of smallpox, other things, while they were alive. Horrifying stuff. Now, was this guy punished? Hells no. He was absorbed he got a job at Fort Detrick, Maryland. His whole staff. This was quickly absorbed and assimilated as part of what was the operating system in the Cold War against the Soviets, and we saw the utilization of bioterror in Korea, in Vietnam, against the American-owned population in the 1970s and 80s in a variety of ways. So we already have like a long-standing utilization of pathogens and utilizing human experiments, right? People in asylums, people, I can go into MK Ultra as another aspect of this for the mind war stuff that also came from Nazi scientists and the British. But that's another conversation. So, but all that to say, there was already going on. They have an MO doing this for decades. And after 9/11, for sure, I alluded to this, the anthrax attacks, few people died. A low-level employee at Fort Detrick was thrown under the bus as a patsy. I think he died in a prison, saying that he radicalized himself watching too many videos of recruitment videos from Al Qaeda or something, and he just then decided to steal pathogens of anthrax and send it around the U.S. government. But what that did justify then was the BioShield Act of 2004 under Dick Cheney and Victoria Nuland, Cheney's assistant, who then went on to be the ambassador at NATO. And the BioShield Act turned out to be a $50 billion bonanza of cash for the expanded bioweapons system, the complex. It grew and it grew, and Obama accelerated it. You know, Obama was a part of, with Richard Lugar, another Rhodes Scholar, senator. They together were sent to Georgia, where they established the Lugar Center and a variety of bioweapons laboratories there that Russia has been trying to get some transparency on. These are very opaque things. When Obama was in office, he then passed the bill, as I mentioned, to create the Jupiter Centaur Biolabs, the bioweapon systems run by the Pentagon and the US, South Korea military systems. South Korea is a colony, okay? It's a military colony. It's not a nation state. There's 28,000 American troops. And the Jupiter Centaur biolabs are very powerful. There are protests that you're not being shown in the media in the West about these things that you could see if you go to Korean news. The Korean people, many politicians in South Korea, are freaked out because they share a lot of the same genotypes as the Chinese and obviously North Koreans. And they're protesting against the fact that like weapons grade anthrax from these labs was caught in a FedEx mailing system. That was scandalous, but they're doing work on all sorts of various pathogens, other things that I don't fully understand, but a lot of it is bad. And one thing to keep in mind is that the manifesto for how post 9/11 bioweapons would be utilized was written in the Rebuilding America's Defenses Project for a New American Century report, which people can even read online. And it's very clear. This is September 2000 that it was published. I think Kagan was with Wolfowitz was a lead author. And they write that in the 21st century, targeting Russia and China, of course, being the two most dangerous threats to a U.S. hegemony, in the 21st century, warfare is going to take place, as they say, primarily in the domain of cyber, as well as in the domain of pathogens, which they say could be targeted for ethnic targeting. So every genotype from different ethnicities have different signatures that could allow them to be, certain people could be rendered, could suffer a lot for a pathogen which causes another genotype of a Caucasian, let's say, to not suffer very much. That's one thing that they put out directly. And they say that this could now move with this current science from the domain of terror into a politically useful tool. And that's them literally saying it. I'm not even paraphrasing. So again, the Chinese and the Russians have spoken out a lot about this. Since 2013, I began noticing that there have been a lot of attempts by them to get the international community to look at this. I know that right now, my hypothesis, and I think it's a pretty solid one, is that both Russia and China have been treating whatever the hell was released in 2020 in January as a potential weapon released that they don't fully understand. They've been trying to keep control of how they respond, instead of abiding by whatever the international rules-based orderistas want them to do. So, for example, in China, they still have a robust, I'm not even sure if I'm allowed to say this, hydroxychloroquine. Can I even say that? No, I can't. Probably I can't, actually. Damn.
No.
No, I don't think I could say that word. I'm sorry.
Say the H word. Okay.
Oh,
and they're not even using the H. They're using the C, just the C by itself.
Oh, man.
But don't worry about
this. I don't know. All right.
Well, it's too late. We're live.
Okay, we're live. Oh, boy.
You're gonna have to give us jobs now. That's it.
Okay.
By the way.
Okay.
So that's it. That's in short, that's how I'm thinking about how they're strategizing about it. They can't say certain things. They're trying to keep control of certain responses. And that's what I'll say.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people who talked about like Shanghai, which has a lot of close ties to the West. That operation over there was to kind of weed out and find some people that they had to get rid of right now. Maybe. And that's why they're just now open for business. I heard that today and I was like, well, that does make some sense over there if they want to kind of go in there and grab what's what. Sam, do you have any other questions, by the way?
No, that's it. We've been going a while, but
I do have one last question.
Yeah.
Well, my last question is if this is pulled off by the new anti-globalist, anti-Bilderberg regime of Putin maybe merging with Xi Jinping and India together, is what does that mean for Zelensky and the government in Ukraine? When this thing is over, are they going to allow that particular type of government to stay? Or are they going to say, gone, you're out, and no more West bullshit?
Yeah, that second one, for sure. Yeah. I mean, there's nothing to negotiate with. I mean, Zelensky is a shell of a nothing. Like, there's nothing there. So you need somebody to be a manager of that Ukraine has the most potential. I mean, it went from the highest per capita GDP country in 1989 of all Eastern Europe. And I think most of Europe as a whole, like, it was really industrially advanced, high per capita living standards. It was like a tourist zone of the world. And it went down to like zero, bottom of the barrel, highest corruption just now 30 years later after billions of dollars of aid given to them. Like, where did this aid go? What did we restructure exactly? So I think that was the intent, was there was no Nazi problem back there that was serious back in the late 80s because people had economic security. They were not easy to radicalize when they have faith in the future, a good quality job, they could feed their families, they're productive, right? It's hard to radicalize a people like that. So it's only now, after 30 years of shock therapy, economic rape, that people are in such a state of despair, demoralization. It's the same thing for the Arab states too, right? Like, go back to Kabul, 1971. There's pictures that look like modern day New York.
Oh yeah,
women are walking around like they're
the hippie trail, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Fucking
and
beautiful.
Totally. And so that was a population where women were getting education. Like, it was moving in a good direction, and that had to be blown up in the 80s by Zbigniew. And as a consequence, you get more and more young people who don't have a sense of the future. They live in despair, nihilism. They're easy to radicalize. You offer them $500 a month to pick up a gun, and maybe they'll get lucky and have some virgins, and like they don't have knowledge. They have no ability to think critically about whether this interpretation of the Quran is right or wrong. They need the money, and they're kind of like, again, existential and looking for an excuse out, So that's the thing with Ukraine today, I think, too. There's a big Nazi problem culturally. There's been decades of Azov training camps run by Svoboda and others that have trained young kids to learn how to like make bombs and do Nazi drills and stuff. And you see videos and pictures of this stuff online, and it's scary.
Yeah. So they had Blackwater go in there and train some fucking troops. That's the level they hit. Blackwater went in there and trained a lot of troops. It's just like, it's sick what we did to these countries. And we've done this before, whether it be Afghanistan with the Mujahideen, and now over here in Ukraine, we did it in Syria, we did it in Libya. We don't stop. And really, I would wish the American people would just wake up and look at the foreign policy and see what's going on around them, because it is completely disgusting. And anytime they pull those types of behavior, it's always going to come back home. The chickens are always going to come back to roost. And that's where we're at today.
Yes.
Thank you so much for coming on and having this discussion. It was very productive, very interesting, I'm sure, to the audience. So thank you.
Yeah. Hey, thank you. Anytime you want to do this again, let me know. It's fun.
Well, next week we want you to come on the morning show. Steve is licking his chops, right? That great panel you had with Tom Luongo, Ian Davis. We already had Tom and Ian on. So now we got to get you on there and have some more fun, because this is some amazing stuff that you talked about. And really, to tell you the truth, it's right now, everything is like playing out in front of our very own eyes. This is like some serious stuff, whether it become this kind of like transhumanistic kind of agenda with all these biolabs and everything that's going on, or what Putin's actually doing over there, because it really does seem evident that everybody else around him is like freaking out from what he's doing. So that's why I'm kind of leaning more towards the theories that you guys have talked to about, you and Tom, that is. And I can't thank you enough for coming on. This has been an amazing conversation today, Matt.
Thank you, guys.
Till next time. See you next time.
Bye.
Later, brother.
Bye. So,
Matt Ehret, ladies and gentlemen.
So we're going to go to Rockfin only, right? For this last
section? Yeah. It's not going to be a long section. We're going to go to Rockfin only. Should I read the super raise real quick, fam?
Yeah, sure.
Well, I mean, what did you think about that conversation? Holy shite.
Yeah. I mean, I mostly agree. There are a couple things, but I'm right there. I mean, I do believe that Putin, not just Putin, but like, I do think elements of China. I don't think it's all of China. I don't think it's all of Russia. I do think it's elements, and people are opposing this globalist agenda. And that's definitely what I see happening. And I mean, based on everything, I can't disagree with that. I really can't. Although there are things that I think are going to happen with the global South and Africa in particular. I forgot to ask about Africa. that China is doing in Africa that are concerning, to say the least, as an understatement. And I think, I do want to have a panel of African, like it's Somali, Ethiopia, to kind of ask them about China and what they think about China. Because when it comes to Latin America, though, when we talk to people like Camilla and people who know Bolivia, China has basically just helped them so much in terms of like the transportation and all of that. And so, is it really a multipolar world? Perhaps would be a multipolar world with some strings attached, perhaps. Anytime there's centralized power, there's always the possibility of corruption. So, but of course, I think, like he said, a lot of those people would rather hop off the Titanic sinking into another boat, because it's a better relationship than what it's been with the unilateralism of the states. So
I want to talk about India, because India is like a very interesting situation. I mean, India historically is tied to Israel, and a lot of Hindu Americans are very conservative and loving of the U.S. But if India's made this move to go, hey man, peace, don't avoid the chicken grease, I'm out. You're going to see the attitude change from a lot of Hindu Americans as far as their attitude towards America and Israel is concerned. That's a whole nother freaking quagmire I'd like to understand over there too as well. So there's a lot of things. It's chess, and it's being played out right in front of us right now. And it's just going to be very interesting, because it seems like, what is that next move if these globalists lose control, right? And that's why one of my questions was like, hey, man, after this ends in this last kind of stand in this region over here in Ukraine, and once Russia gets complete control of that situation over there, are they going to pivot and go on the offense in the global south, especially in Latin America, where they seem to be having more increasing influence every single day? Because obviously the global south, a lot of these countries want the boot off their neck from the United States. You know what I'm saying? So there's so many things that have to play out right now. And it's just so interesting. And I love Matt's perspective on a lot of things. I know a lot of our audience wasn't crazy about the global warming stuff, you know what I'm saying? And the push for energy and whatnot. I saw David Crow making some statements over there. David, shut up, get your ass over to the Bilderberg group over there and learn. Get a presence out there, get a phone, get a camera. I mean, get there.
On the global warming, it's kind of like with the gun situation with me. Like, I've definitely believe that there's obviously pollution. There's no denying it. You go to Peru, you see literally pollution in the sky. You go to Colombia, Bogota, it's gray. And it's not because it's just gray, it's because there's pollution. So there's obvious pollution. The mechanisms of solving it, though, can we really solve it just based on those elements? I don't think so. I think I do agree with him on new elements that are extremely advanced and that we're not even allowed to talk about because they're so advanced. I think there's a medium, though. I think that, there's an element of looking at global warming or pollution and everything else. But also, it is also being weaponized by these big corporations and these agendas to push the Great Reset and to actually monetize this whole thing. The climate change movement has been totally co-opted to make some people rich. Naomi Klein is an example of somebody I used to really like when she talked about disaster capitalism and the shock doctrine. And her calling the Great Reset a conspiracy smoothie and all of that just goes to show that that is part of the agenda. So I don't think it's one or the other. I think we do have a problem, but I also think that problem is being exacerbated and manipulated by those in control to push their agendas.
And it sure is not going to be solved by the Green New Deal and the fact that these progressives are still fucking out there pushing this shit. Guys, read the legislation. It doesn't even address any of the military pollution in this country too as well. I mean, that's the big thing about that. It's just stupid
the war,
right now.
Right? Like you got imperialism. If we just stop that would like literally it would help so much. And also it's just the way we do things, right? The way we ostracize one population to uplift another. That also contributes to the pollution and the yachts, like the planes. You got Leonardo DiCaprio talking about environmentalism while flying on a plane every other day and having like yacht parties. Like that's the whole other aspect. Like they tell you to recycle, but what does that do when these psychopaths and these rich motherfuckers literally get to do whatever they want. So there's like all of that has to be taken into consideration.
Yeah, if we'd stop bombing all this fucking planet and wipe our ass with some hemp, we'd have less problems. Fam, I'm going to read some hemp, fam. I know you do, because it's just, I mean, we're deforesting the whole fucking country here, the whole world, the whole planet. That's a solution right there. And I believe you can make energy from it. So, you know what I'm saying? But don't get me wrong, I would still ban fracking tomorrow because it pollutes our water. That's something we need to talk about. There has to be a happy medium with this thing. But the Green New Deal is just virtue signaling at this point, ladies and gentlemen. And that's why these progressives are so fucking weak, because they feel they got a virtue signal to get elected. I mean, just I was looking at some of their candidacies, some of the candidates in their whole campaigns. It's just like, Jesus Christ. They're not even addressing civil liberties. They're not addressing foreign policy.
Copy paste.
I mean, can't do it, fam. Can't do it anymore.
Copy paste. Yeah,
it is.
It's copy paste. It's not nothing real. Yeah, but I mean the pollution issue is real. Like especially in Latin America, you can see it. And yeah.
Well, let's read some Super Rays and get to Rockfin real quick, guys. This is the chance now. Right now, we have a great section. Just put up the title real quick for us, Oz, and let the people see the title. I'm going to read some of them. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. You were going to read Super Rays, right?
Yeah. I'm going to read Super Rays, but I just want them to get the title up there because I want everybody to get over to Rockfin.
Okay. I'm even scared of you putting the title.
I don't even put the title up.
You already did.
Never mind.
It's a very hardcore assertion.
We've done two things today, by the way. You say May.
Yeah. Pasta.
All right. I'm sorry. Gotcha. Okay. Chris Leone, thank you so much for including Mexico, Matt. Everyone always forgets Mexico, but Mexico is a very important part of Latin America.
I love Mexico.
And you're right. They do have a new leadership there. They have a new identity. AMLO, he addresses his people every single day with a speech every single morning. He put himself to a referendum, said, let me know if I should go. Let me know if I should stay. You guys decide. And they said, stay, AMLO. So these next 3 years for AMLO is going to be huge. But, you know, there's a lot of connections between the intelligence community in America and Mexico. 3 years.
He's almost done.
He's got a 6-year term. He's got 3 years left.
Oh, really? Oh.
I could be wrong. Double check that for me real quick.
I thought he was done in 2023.
I don't think so. Okay. I could be wrong, but let me know. I think he's got a 6-year term. He's done 3 years. He's got 3 years more is what I thought. I could be wrong. Okay. El Brillante. This is the kind of information that is on my mind. If we don't have this kind of information, how can we figure out how to respond to what is going on? Hidden information has us operating blind and subject to the oligarchs to guide us around in the dark. Amen. And that's it. We have to have these conversations. And there's a lot of people, you don't agree with Matt and his theories and whatnot. Look at everything he's saying. He talked about the Club of Rome. That's like the next thing I really want to dive into now that I understand a lot of these groups that have come out of the Rockefeller-funded, these are Rockefeller-funded groups, the Bilderberg Group and whatnot. That's where a lot of the heart of the problems are coming from, these oligarchs from back in the day. Anthony, I want off this ride. I don't know why. This is a fun-ass ride, Anthony. You should stay on with us. Mike Cortez or Mick Cortez. Thank you for the super great contribution. It is always appreciated on the couch. And AREM. We love you, AREM. Thank you so much. Have the best weekend. You too, AREM. You are amazing. You always show us the love, and everybody else who showed that love. And if you can't show the love financially, just show it with the clicks. Show it with the thumbs up. Share it out there, guys. I mean, somebody was telling me today, it's like it's almost crazy stupid the way we've been suppressed, especially on YouTube. And they're trying to continue to do this stuff, and it's going to get even worse, right? We're still at this time of mass censorship. It hasn't slowed down. It's only going to get worse for a little bit. So we definitely need your help. And all those people who contributed to the GiveSendGo./support the Convo Couch, you guys were amazing for getting us on the ground in Colombia. It was an amazing experience. And it's important that we go and do those things because like we said again, and Fam could probably back this up, is that a lot of people out there's a lot of anti-imperialists. There's a lot of people who understand the politics. But then you come in with the Convo Couch, and we come in with the politics and the process and say, let's look at this. Let's examine this. Let's see what the areas of vulnerability are. What can we do to show and shine a light to make sure that the people of Colombia get to decide what Colombia does in the future? And that's the big thing. We can always compare and say, this is what's going on compared to back home, which we know is a joke. And Fam says it all the time. We don't got fair elections. But I mean, thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, for putting us there, because it meant so much. And I think it is important work, and I'm glad to be doing it. And I'm so happy that you guys put us there.
And we're still following because it's not over yet, as we were talking about it earlier. But also I wanted to give you guys an update. I will be going to see the fam on their ridiculous Anarchy in the Morning show.
AM Wake Up, fam. AM Wake Up.
Whatever. AM Wake Up. At the crack ass of dawn. I just dealing with Steve that early in the morning is a challenge. So I'm going to need all of your help to really be able to deal with that in the morning. Okay. I'm going to need a lot of coffee, a lot of go fee. You know, I gotta go fight it off with Steve because he was sharing Fidel memes and all this stuff. So that, and then, so you guys know there's Biden and the State Department are holding this summit on America, or what do they call it? Like summit on democracy, democracy summit or whatever.
Something like that.
Yeah, something like that.
Bullshit.
Where they rejected Nicaragua, Venezuela, Cuba, and they haven't said anything as to why. You know, we know why. But they
People summit.
There's going to be Kamala's going to be there. Our very good friend, what's his name? Anthony Blinken's going to be there. You know, everybody's going to be there. They're all coming to LA. So we can't go to that because the State Department will not give us press credentials because, first of all, independent media, RT, no, that's not going to happen. But I am interested in going to see if anybody's protesting it on the outskirts. And I know simultaneously there's the People's Summit also happening as a mechanism of protest to the Democracy Summit. So we're going to try to be there at least for part of it, possible be there for part of it. And I'll be there too. So just look forward to that because there's a lot of things going on.
All right, guys, get on over to Rockfin and Rockfin only because that's the only place where we can play when it comes to speaking the truth. Thank you, everybody, once again, for who joined in today, left the thumbs up, did the shares, left the super raise, all our Patreons out there. You guys are totally amazing. We love you. We couldn't do this without you. We're going to continue to need your support along the way as the censorship and suppression continues. And it's going to just get worse, fam. It's not going to ease up. So thank you for everybody out there. We're going to leave YouTube in 5, in 4, in 3, in 2, in 1. Oh, sorry.